Today's Gemara and Beitzah Daf Lamed, all the learning as we go towards the end of this month of Tishrei. He generously sponsored as Chutz for Shlema for Shem Ben Yutam Mirtz Hashem. He should have a continued recovery, be able to come home from the hospital very soon. As well as Chashidach, we saw Chaim the Virgin Miriam Bas Yitzchil Shandelasa Bas Shoshana Makad Leo Mordechai Ben Dava Shindol as Segito Bas Dava Shindol. As well as Chutz for Shlema Shmuel Yosef and Hani Afraid the Man Mevega Chaim Esar Shalom Sibin Reisa Idol Sar Bas Kenendel Ita Bas Yin Bas Chai Yisai Yisol Ben Mendel Ezer Beretz Miz Shalei Shalom Bas Naomi Bas Shavig Shechan Shbom Batila Tanil Ben Chan Reisa B'Chai Bas Mina Din Eino Bas Shina Mendel Siva Fake Ber Mechal Yisona Tel Hoover Rivka Bas Hashem and Azal Zimech Lester Besoich Sha'ar Chayli Yisrael. We pick it up. We made a haschala. We began the fourth parak yesterday. We read the Mishnah. Let's just speak out the Mishnah outside before we get straight into the Gemara. The Mishnah taught us we're beginning the halachas of Ovdin Dechol, weekday activities, and we're going to see that this has to do with tircha. This has to do with excessive effort, but it's important to mention now, and we'll mention numerous times, that what is called excessive effort? Excessive effort is not necessarily dependent on how much sweat that you sweat out, how much effort that you exert. It's when Chazal determine that it is tircha yiseira. For example, to give one raya, we know that being made for nedarim, you're not allowed to get rid of a neder on Shabbos. Why? Ovdin dechal, tircha yiseira. What's the tircha? I'm just talking. When Chazal said something is not allowed, that inherently determines that it is tircha yisera. And yesterday we began in the Mishnah. The Mishnah taught us that you're not allowed to walk through the street with big boxes, big bags. Nothing to do with Erev, nothing to do with carrying. The mere fact that it's Shabbos, it's Yontif, you're not allowed to carry such excessive quantities. You'll have to carry one at a time. And today in the Gemara we'll see the parameters of this halacha. Says the Gemara, Tana, we learned in the Mishnah. So number one, if you have no other choice, says the Mishnah, says the Gemara, then it is mutter. What does it mean you have no other choice? Says Rashi, very importantly, you've allowed to guess, and you got to bring a lot of drinks home. Therefore, it's mutter. Meaning, it's not just for no reason. You got to get a whole case of soda home. The guests are waiting. That would be a case it's mutter. But for no reason, it is forbidden. Says the Gemara, Iskin Rava established from Mechuza de Daru B'Dochka. That's something that you normally carry on your shoulder. The Daru Baragla. Carry with a pitchfork. The Dari Baragla, something you normally carry with a pitchfork. The Dari Ba'agra, carry with a pole. The Dari Ba'agra, that which you normally carry with a pole. The Dari Ba'achba, you should carry with a handheld pole. The Dari Ba'achba, that which you normally carry with a handheld pole. Nifra Sudari Aleh, you should spread a kerchief over it. Vim Layevsher, Shari, again, if you know the chance, no other way than it's mutter damar marim yevshel shanais mutter. So similarly, we're seeing it right away that a mechuzah they took whatever was the normal way of carrying large quantities, said don't do that. Rather, what do? Carry it in a different type of way in order to remove this from the category of Ovdin Dechol, a weekday activity. Says the Gemara, Amar lei Rav Chanan bar Rav Rav Ashi Amar Rabban, said the Rabban, how much you're able to be Mishana that you could change, that is what you should change. Says the Gemara, excuse me, I read that wrong. One more time. As much as you could change, you should change any Yantif. Asks the Gemara 1 second. There are women that fill up buckets of water. We see that's how people do. They fill up a bucket and carry it normally. No one says something to them. So it says, I don't understand. You just told me halacha, you have to do mishinoi. But we see women schlepping barrels and buckets of water home, and no one says anything. There's no other way of doing it. What should these women do? They should draw with a bigger bucket. Meaning, if they normally use a big bucket, they should use a small bucket. Now to take more trips to get home. Similarly, if they normally use a small bucket, you use a big bucket. It's carrying, it's more effort. So says the Gemara, whichever way you cut it, you run into an issue. If you want to say to use a smaller bucket, now it's more effort walking back and forth. If you want to tell me to use a bigger bucket, now it's heavier. Says the Gemara, so what are you going to tell me? You should cover the bucket with a cover. The lid is going to come off, and then you come to carry the lid. If you're going to tell me they should tie the lid onto the bucket, it's going to rip, and then you come to retie it. Differ Sudari Ale, put a kerchief over the bucket. You know what's going to happen? It's going to come soaked with water. You can come to wring it out. So says the Gemara, we're in a big problem. There's nothing they can do different. Different buckets, more effort, more exertion, more walking. The lid's going to fall off. You're going to carry it. You're going to tie it. You're going to have all these other issues. Perhaps. Therefore, there's no other way of doing it. And that's the reason. So similarly, now we're seeing a second application. Number one, we started the Gemara and we said, like Rashi taught us, if I have a lot of gas, I didn't know how to carry it allowed. Number two is if you're in a scenario that you have no other way out, it's also allowed. Says the Gemara, Amalei Rava. Tonight we learned in the Mishnah. The Gemara is now, it's a very fundamental Gemara. The Gemara just said a moment ago, we brought a kasha. And the question was that we see a woman doing this and no one's screaming, no one says anything. The Gemara now is going to hone in on that detail. Is that a raya? Because you see people doing something wrong and no one says something that shows us something? Says the Gemara, 1 second. Tonight we learned in the Mishnah. In mitavchen, misavkin, miraktin, you're not allowed to do different types of clap your hands, slap your thighs, and dance on Yontif or on Shabbos. But nowadays, what do we see? We see people clapping and dancing and hitting their thighs, and no one say anything. And so meaning the Gemara is asking, does that mean it's mutter? Of course not. It's a straight up Mishnah that it's aser. Says Gemara, 1 second. According to your reasoning, that which Rava says, a person is not allowed to sit at the edge of a lechi on Shabbos. A Gemara, a din, they will learn to the Gemara Eruvin. Why? If you're right at the end of the lechi, your item might roll out, and you see this unfortunately very commonly when people are right near the edge of an Eruv. They're a little bit too not so careful. Something's going to fall outside and you're going to come to bring it back in. But says the Gemara, 1 second. What do we see? We see that there are women who take their buckets and they go. They sit at the entrance to the alleyway and no one says anything. So says Gemara, what are you saying? We see another story that women are doing something which we know is us and no one's saying anything. So what do you have to say? We have 2 different stories that we have seen that people are doing things which are forbidden. They're clapping and they're dancing. They're sitting at the edge of the alleyway. But what's going on? It's not a raya, it's mutter. So what do you see from the Mishnahs? Elo, what do you have to say? Hanoch lam Yisrael, leave Klal Yisrael. Mutav sheishagin vayimezidin. It's better for them to be a shagging. They don't know any better. Don't say anything. So says the Gemara, back to our question. So what's the raya for the woman drawing water? Maybe the reason we don't tell the woman to stop drawing water, even though it's really forbidden because it's excessive exertion. Really it is often the chol. You know why we don't say anything? Because it's better to be a shagging. They're not going to listen to us. But now the Gemara points out such very important words. When do we say this? When do we say this rule of don't tell people what's wrong? Let them continue erring because they're not going to listen. That's only on Dinei Derabanan. Avo b'daraisa, loy. When it comes to Din Daraisa, we're never allowed to stand idle. You see someone being over Daraisa, you're not allowed to say they're not going to listen to me. It's irrelevant. You have to tell them it is forbidden. But says the Gemara, not so fast. It's not true. By both of them. Don't tell them anything. When it comes to Taisim Kippur, we just had it so a few week and a half ago. We know people are makbin on Taisim Kippur. And therefore says the Gemara, even on Dinei Daraisa, if they're not going to listen, you don't have to say anything to them. Now this is something which is not so simple, it's a bit debatable. There are different rayos, but it comes to carrying in Shabbos. That maybe we mentioned the Shabbos. Famously, is women allowed to wear jewelry out in the street. We know that everyone does. What's the reason we let them do it? One of the reasons over there is where the Shulchan Aruch says, Hanach lem, leave Klal Yisrael. It's better to be a shagi, which of course is very difficult. It's very difficult. But let's leave it at now. Our Gemara came out lemaskana that even on Dinei Daraisa, we're allowed to let someone do something if they're not going to listen to us. Says the Gemara, which by the way, let's just point out something extremely important. But if they're going to listen, you should tell them. Sometimes say, let's not tell them, but they're going to listen, so tell them. If a woman or anyone else is going to listen, of course we have to tell them. The Mishnah continued, says the Gemara about 20 lines on the bottom. Maschilim, ba'arimbas tevin. We begin using a stack of straw, even though it's not for yontiv usage. Amar Rav Kana says Rav Kana. This is what it means that we start using items even from a storage place on yontiv. Meaning, something set aside for a long time, you're allowed to take from there to feed the animals on yontiv. Says the Gemara Mani. Who is this opinion? Rav Shimoni, this is the opinion of Rav Shimon that holds the last lay muksa. It's not muksa. Meaning, if you hold of something as muksa, so the mere fact that you put it into a storage area, you're not going to use it for a long time, that makes a muksa. You're not allowed to take it out from there in Yontif. Says the Gemara, for the fact that our Mishnah allows you to, shows us we're going with Rav Shimon, who doesn't hold the muksa. But asks the Gemara, you must say, for what the end of the Mishnah teach us? Avaloi Beitzah Shabbat muksa. You're not allowed to take wood out of the backyard if it's not designated for Yontif. Asyan the Rabbi Yehuda Dislay Muksa. A classical contradiction. The end of the Mishnah says, if I have wood in the backyard, don't use it. Why not? Because it's Muksa. That's Rabbi Yehuda. The Rishas Rav Shimon, the same as Rabbi Yehuda. Answers the Gemara, Acha Ba'arzi Ve'ashuchi Askinan. The end of the Mishnah is talking about cedars and certain types of ashchuchi trees. The muksa, machzor, and kiss are very expensive wood. Va'afilu in those cases of Shimon Maida. So we could say that the entire Mishnah does concur. It's not a contradiction because the end of the Mishnah is a unique case of muksa, machlas, chesara, and kiss. Ikedamasla, seifa, somewhere we just said on the seifa. Avlo be'ez Shimon muksa. The end of the Mishnah said you can't use the wood in the storage house. Amar Rav Kana says, what do we see in the end of the Mishnah? In Maslin Beitzah Tchila, the exact opposite. You're not allowed to use the stuff from the storage house. Mani, who is this? Rav Yehudi. Tislei Moksa. Ema Reisha, what is the first part of the Mishnah? Say Maslin Beitzah Tvem, and you're allowed to use a stack of straw. Ask the Rav Shimon, the last Moksa. Answers the Gemara, same answer. Also, Kitamna, Sarya, Tamna, Sarya, Chazi, Latina. Over there, what's referring to, actually a little bit of a different answer, almost the same, referring to Tamna, Sarya, decayed straw, which is sitting and waiting to use for fuel because there's no other use. And therefore, even Rav Yehuda holds, it's not Muksa, the Isbei Kaitzim. Excuse me, one more time. Hasam Betamni Sarya. Talking about decayed straw, which is set aside for fuel, and that's where you're allowed to use it. Says the Gemara, Tamna, Sarya. What do you mean? You could use it for something. You could make cement out of it. So it should be muksa. Answers the Gemara, this way, Kaitzim has thorns. Therefore, even Rav Yehuda agrees it's not going to be muksa. Two different ways of reconciling the Mishnah, that it's not a contradiction between the opinions of Rav Shimon and of Rav Yehuda, and understanding that when the Mishnah said you're allowed to use a stack of straw, whether we're going with Rav Shimon or whether that contradicts the end of the Mishnah that says you're not allowed to use the cedars, whether the cedars are muksbas, chsar, and kiss, or not. Says the Mishnah, as we turn over to Lamed of Beis, a similar halacha of wood and items set aside when you're allowed to use them on Shabbos and Yontif. Says, Yontif particularly, says the Mishnah, Ein noitin eitzah min sukkah. How beautiful, we just finished Sukkot 2 days ago. Yesterday actually, 2 days ago in Eretz Yisrael, and here is a Gemara about Sukkah. You're not allowed to take wood from the Sukkah, from the hut. Of course, this means Ela min samach loy, only that which is next to it. And we're going to see in the Gemara what exactly this means. But the bare words of the Mishnah said, don't take wood from the Sukkah, but take wood from next to the hut. Says the Gemara, why are you not allowed to take wood off of the hut? Because you're removing and demolishing an aisle. If you start taking a piece of wood off the wall, a piece of wood off the ceiling of your hut, you're effectively destroying your tent, and that's not allowed. So says the Gemara, if there's wood next to the hut, so why is that any different? You're also destroying the tent. Explains the Gemara now what's going on. 4 lines to the top. Lamed Amid Beis. Amar Rabbi Yehuda Amar Shmuel. My samach. What does it mean? Samach near the hut. Samach l'defanois, near the walls. Meaning, you can't take something off the roof because whatever's on the roof is considered part of the hut at large. And therefore, by removing it, it's called seiser, demolishing. But something near the walls, it doesn't become part of the walls. It's not woven together with the walls. It's like an extra piece of wood leaning on the walls that you would, yes, be allowed to take, and that is not called destroying. Says that's one answer of Rav Yehuda or Shmuel. Rav Menashe Amar, second tower is Afilu Dema B'She'ein Samach l'Defanos. I'll tell you that what it says you're allowed to take it is when it's not near the walls. Kitanyehi Basu Raisa. It's telling you you're allowed to take it off the ceiling, but it's referring to bundles. If you have a bundle on the ceiling of the hut of the sukkah, it doesn't become one with the sukkah for the mere fact that it's in a bundle, and that's the reason why you'd be allowed to remove it, and it's not considered demolishing of the hut. Says the Gemara, Tanya, we learned in a Beitzah, which is going to give us a little bit more of an explanation of this in our Mishnah. Rav Chia bar Yosef came to Rav Yochanan. Rav Chia bar Yosef learned from Rav Yochanan, "Einoilin eitzim min hasukah, elam min hasamach lai." Like our Mishnah, you now take wood from the sukkah itself, only which is samach near it. Rav Shimon matter, and Rav Shimon allows. Vishavim, but they all agree. V'sukkis achag b'chag shasura. If it's actually sukkis last week on Yom Tiv, everything is forbidden. Number one, they agree, and number two, v'misna alea akol lefi tonight. If you made it tonight that you want to use it, then akol lefi tonight, everything goes to your stipulation. And you would, be allowed to use it. So you have a Bryce that says, number one, don't take off the wood. Take what's from Samach nearby. Number two, Rav Shimon allows. Number three, everyone agrees on Sukkot, don't touch it unless you have a Tanai. So now says the Gemara, for Rav Shimon Matir, Rav Shimon allows. What's going on? What does it mean Rav Shimon allows? For you're destroying a tent. You're destroying your Sukkah. Why is it allowed? You know what the Bryce is referring to when Rav Shimon allowed you to take the wood off the roof of the walls of fallen down sukkah. Rav Shimon letamei the Leslie muksa. Rav Shimon does not hold a muksa, and therefore once it falls down, you're allowed to take it. Meaning the whole issue at hand was Seiser demolishing, destroying the hut. Once the hut falls, you're allowed to use the wood. It's muksa, it's set aside to be a sukkah. Shimon doesn't hold of such. The excess of oil in the oil, and the candle on the plate, also is forbidden. Rav Shimon Matir, Rav Shimon says it's allowed. Says the Gemara, so that's the raya. Rav Shimon doesn't hold the muksa. So once the sukkah falls, you're allowed to take what you want. Ask the Gemara 1 second, and it's so beautiful how we can appreciate this right after Yom Tiv. Mi dami. When I have a candle with oil, you're waiting. When is the oil going to go out? When's the candle going to go out? So the leftover oil is not muksa. It's not maksedaita. It's not out of your mind. You're waiting for it to be finished. Is a person waiting to see when's his hut going to collapse? Of course not. So maybe Rav Shimon would agree that the wood is muksa. It's a wobbly sukkah, and therefore from yesterday your das was on it, you knew it's going to fall. That's the reason why Rav Shimon holds it is not muksa. So that is a bit more of an elaboration on the din of the Mishnah. That what it means, don't take the wood. It means it's because the din of seiser, of demolishing, but that which is samach, that which is nearby, it's not part of the actual structure you're allowed to take. Rav Shimon allows in a case that it falls down that you know it's going to fall because there's not going to be any issue of muksa. Says the Gemara, the two dots, about 20 lines down, V'shavan, they agree. Asks the Gemara, Mimahani Tanai. Mimahani but tonight. Does a Tanai really help? Do you make a Tanai and now you'll use the wood of the sukkah during Yom Tiv? The wood of the sukkah itself is forbidden for 7 days. Shemar, it says in the Torah, Chaga sukkah shivas yom la'Hashem for 7 days to Shevet and Rabbi Doim b'seirayim v'nayim shekashim shechal shim shabayim ala chagiga. Just like the name of heaven is on the carbon itself, Kachal Shem Shamayim Ala Sukkah. The sukkah itself has kedusha. Tamaloi Merchag Sukkah Shivs Yom Lashem Machag Lashem Av Sukkah Lashem. So ask the Gemara, I don't understand what's going on. The sukkah itself has inherent kedusha. It's used for a mitzvah. So even after the sukkah falls, you should not be allowed to use that wood. So why did you just tell me the Vishav and they all agree that if you make a Tanai, if you make a stipulation, it's going to help? What does a Tanai help? It's inherently used for the sukkah. Answers the Gemara. You're right. Says Raminashia. It's not referring to making a Tanai on Sukkis. It's referring to making a Tanai on a hut. If you have a hut and you make a Tanai that when it falls, I want to use the wood, that's allowed. But on Sukkis, Raminashia Brei Rabba says, you're right. You would not be allowed to use it. Avol sukkah the mitzvah loy mahani but Tanai. It's not going to help a Tanai, says Raminashia. The Gemara is not happy. For sukkah the mitzvah loy. Really? You can't make a Tanai in a sukkah. But Tani went to the Bryce says chacha kel chasa. You cover your sukkah with chach v'atara b'kramim, and you decorate it with wonderful, colorful cloths, with sadin and then sheets and zuram that have pictures. But talabay him, and you hang on it nuts and shkidim and almonds and farsikim and peaches, rimanim and pomegranates, barachili and navim, and clusters of grapes, yinis ushmanim and wines and oils, uslasais. and different fine flowers, Vatara Shibailin, or wreaths of grain, all the wonderful decorations of your sukkah. Says the Beitzah, Asur stopping man on Motzei Yontif. Can't use it. Till today, after Yontif, you're not allowed to touch all different decorations, all different parts of your sukkah. Yontif Achar Shalchak. Ve'emisno, but says the Beitzah, but if you made a Tanai, Aleim, Hakolafi Tanai. So why are you telling me a Tanai doesn't help? Yes, it does. For Feish Beitzah, explicit, you make it tonight, it helps. Answers the Gemara, when did the Beitzah say that a Tanai helps? If you make a Tanai stipulation that I'm never making it Kaddish, I'm never making it part of my sukkah, I'm not separating it from it, it's never part of the sukkah proper. Avol atzei sukkah, the wood of the sukkah itself, the chalik kedusha olayu, that the kedusha falls upon it. It's katzoy l'shiva. Inherently, it makes asa for 7 days, and you would not be allowed to make a tanai. So the Gemara just differentiated a unique and a precision of a cut, that the wall of a sukkah, that's when we say that tonight doesn't help. But decorations, etc., then it will. Ask the Gemara 1 second. Why is it any different from that which we saw that says in a Beitzah? Hey, for Shiva Esrogin, Shiva Yomi, you separate 7 Esrogin for 7 days. Use it, eat it. Use it, eat it. Each day you have an Esrogin, then you eat it. What do we see? That once you finish the mitzvah, there's no more Kedusha. Eat it the next day. But what do we see? We see that once you finish the mitzvah, the Kedusha leaves it. The Tanai does help. So why are you not going to do the same thing with the sukkah? I want to make my sukkah for 2 days, and after 2 days finishes, it no longer has kedusha, and I want to use the wood for whatever I want. Answers the Gemara. Awesome, the mitzvah leilos, they should bring us back. We learned this in Gemara and Sukkah. Over there, the nights are separate from the days. Each mitzvah of sukkah, of lulav and esrog is separate. You can't do it at night, you can only do it by day. Miyamim, the mafskal leilos miyamim, kol chad v'chad yoyma mitzvah b'api nafshayu. It's a separate mitzvah. Hacha by sukkah, we all know, the mafskal leilos miyamim, it's a full 7 days straight mitzvah. Kulu and therefore the Gemara concludes, and like I said, how much we can appreciate this right after Yontif, that it was a 7-day mitzvah sukkah. So the Tanai doesn't help. Inherently, the walls have kedusha. Inherently, you'll not be allowed to use those walls for everything else during Yontif. When it comes to decorations, you can make sure they don't have kedusha. When it comes to your lulav and esrog, even it's a separate mitzvah each day, so you can finish your mitzvah the next day, use it for something else. But the sukkah you cannot, and that's the reason why Tanai would not help on the sukkah, on the walls of the sukkah. Pick up for the new Mishnah, Daf Lamed Aleph, Hashem tomorrow.